Welcome to White People, Black Music, and Liberation. I'm Eric, and I'm here on the journey with you. This is a transmission at the intersection of race, music, and spirituality. It's about moving past the programming and into liberation. Is my anger blocking your liberation? This episode feels a little different. It's more of a vignette, a snapshot of me in process, and maybe other people too. But first of all, I want to read you something. Racism is the most challenging issue confronting America, a nation whose ancestry includes every people on earth, whose motto is E pluribus unum, whose ideals of freedom under law have inspired millions throughout the world, cannot continue to harbor prejudice against any racial or ethnic group without betraying itself. Racism is an affront to human dignity, a cause of hatred and division, a disease that devastates society. Notwithstanding the efforts already expended for its elimination, racism continues to work its evil upon this nation. Progress towards tolerance, mutual respect, and unity has been painfully slow and marked with repeated setbacks. The recent resurgence of divisive racial attitudes, the increased number of racial incidents, and the deepening despair of minorities and the poor make the need for solutions ever more pressing and urgent. To ignore the problem is to expose the country to physical, moral, and spiritual danger. Aware of the magnitude and the urgency of the issue, we, the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i of the United States, speaking for the entire U.S. Baha'i community, appeal to all people of goodwill to arise without further delay to resolve the fundamental social problem of this country. We do so because of our feeling of shared responsibility, because of the global experience of the Baha'i community in affecting racial harmony within itself, and because of the vision that the sacred scriptures of our faith convey of the destiny of America. I'm not Baha'i, and I'm not endorsing the Baha'i faith as an answer to the problem. Yet this text was written in 1991. I happened upon this text at a show I was playing with a friend, and it really just caught me as to how it resonates with what's going on in this country even more now than it did when it was written. I've been working with a lot of anger recently. Anger, sadness, frustration at the state of the world. And I'm noticing that my inability to really work with that anger is actually blocking my work for liberation. And not because that anger is wrong, but because I haven't been metabolizing it in a healthy way. So I want to tell you a story and then sit with what it opened up for me. I'm visiting my aunt over the Christmas holiday. I'm staying in a town not far from where I live. It's a fairly affluent town, and it is noticeably whiter than my home community, though there's also a strong Latinx presence there. One morning, I'm at the gym. I've got my headphones on. I'm listening to my iPod. By the way, if there's one thing that children of the 80s love, it's iPods. And I'm just doing my thing when I notice in front of me one of those exercise stations. It's basically a tall chair without a seat. You rest your arms on it and you can do core workouts. A woman who appears to be a woman of color lays a mat down in front of it and starts doing exercises on the floor. Doesn't look like she's actually using the chair itself. 10, maybe 15 minutes go by, and a tall, kind of stiff looking white or a white passing person, probably in his 50s, comes over, starts engaging with her. She's not understanding him, or at least not responding the way he expects her to. And he notices me watching and comes over. And he starts explaining himself to me. I just want her to move so I can use the chair. She's not using it, da-da-dee-da-da-dee-da. And immediately I get triggered, like right away. And some context here, I'm a pretty conflict averse person. And that's led to lots of moments in my life where I haven't stood up for someone in public in situations like this. And I'm not proud of that, but it's a growth edge for me. And at the same time, at this moment, I am so activated that I literally have to say something. I tell him she has every right to be here, to set up where she wants, and to use the gym however she wants. And if he wants to go do something else, she'll probably be done in a second. And I don't understand what the big deal is. Why don't you just go work on something else? And he says, look, I get what you're doing. I appreciate it, but you don't understand. She doesn't speak English. She just needs to move over so I can use the chair. I appreciate what you're doing. He keeps repeating that she's not using it, and it's like a miscommunication issue. I tell him again, no, she has every right to be there. You can't make her move. To me, it's pretty clear that either she genuinely doesn't understand him, or she doesn't feel he has the right to tell her to move, and possibly she's even feigning not understanding. That was my read. I could be wrong. Either way, the conversation escalates. I feel myself getting more and more activated. He seems to expect that I'll be his ally and that I'll go explain things to her, and I just shut him down. I tell him, I don't see the big deal. Go do something else until she's done. Eventually, he leaves me alone. At first, I feel proud of myself. Remember, like I just told you, I'm a conflict-averse person, and there's been plenty of moments where I haven't stood up for someone. But as that feeling of patting myself on the back and self-congratulation fades, something else starts to set in, and I realize I may have completely missed an opportunity here. There were deeper layers happening in that moment, things that I might have been seeing that he wasn't. And I say might because I don't actually know. I didn't give him any space to find out. I shut him down. And I shut him down in a way that didn't invite conversation at all. And, it's totally possible. Maybe there was never going to be a fruitful conversation between the two of us. But the point is, I didn't even allow for the possibility. After sitting with this happened a few weeks ago, so I've been sitting with it. I realized I could have said something like, hey, I'm angry right now, and I don't have the capacity to talk about this with you in this moment. But if you want to unpack what's going on here later, I'd be open to that. Here's my phone number. That could have been an opening. Maybe he would have been receptive, maybe not. The point is, my anger didn't allow me to even see that as an option. And this taps into something that's a little bit bigger. There are people in my family who support policies and people that I see actively harming communities of color and the public at large. And honestly, sometimes I'm so afraid that I'll start yelling at them that I avoid the conversation altogether. I have a lot of work to do with my anger. So I don't have like a lessons learned for you. There's no take home lesson. It's messy. This is my growth edge. And there's some family patterns here too. Looking back, I can see two really familiar patterns with anger in my life. The first is letting it live underground in the deep, dark kind of subconscious sphere. And then it leaks out sideways in all kinds of strange ways. This was for a lot of my life. Carl Jung said If you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And I lived in that for probably about the first 30 years of my life. And I've also been on the receiving end of other people's unconscious anger. So I'm very familiar with that territory. The other pattern, which is a little newer for me, and I've actually spent more time in this dynamic over the last few years, is what I'd call the spiritual bypassing approach to anger. And this is the idea that anger is just negativity. Anger is just something to transcend. Anger is incompatible with being spiritual or a positive person. And this is quite familiar to me. It's common in spiritual circles. And I think it's a common pitfall once someone starts to take some initiative for their inner growth. So I've been in that state a lot. And in some ways, that's even trickier because it seems like it's enlightened. When I shared this story in my men's group, someone offered me a metaphor that really landed for me. They said it can be helpful to treat anger like a crying baby in your arms. Not something to suppress, not something to act out, but something to just hold, to soothe, and stay present with until it settles. That is the only piece of anything that I have that's like a takeaway for this, other than just an admission that this is something that exists with me. Maybe it exists in you. And I'm curious to hear what it brings up for you, especially in the context of anti-racism and liberation work. Remember, you can reach me at whitepeopleblackmusic@gmail.com. But there is another thing that's important to say. Anger has a really nuanced and contextually specific place in anti-racism work. So anger is a logical response to injustice. Now, that's where that paragraph, those couple paragraphs that I read at the beginning of this come into play. There is an injustice here, and we often misdiagnose the anger as the problem, when in reality, it's actually the injustice which is the problem. What I'm seeing right now in the world feels like a very specific form of darkness that's being actively produced. And in many cases, it looks willfully designed to hurt, torture, and inflict harm on people, and specifically people of color. Now, whether that harm is coming from true malignant intent or ignorance, it does feel like a lot of folks have bought into it, and they're putting momentum behind this harm creation. And I'm saying that because I think it's a diagnosis of what's going on, and because in that context, there is no other appropriate response besides anger. That's not entirely true. Let me amend that. Anger is one of many completely valid responses to that context. And it's not a character flaw. It's not something gone wrong. Anger makes sense here. And a lot of times in our culture, as I was saying, we misdiagnose that problem. We say, hey, these people of color are just angry. I saw that in a post that someone made the other day. And we're incredibly reluctant to look at the injustice, the systems, the conditions that are producing that anger. So making space for anger is a really delicate thing because it can run the show. More broadly, our collective inability to sit with this anger, and any anger, is often exactly what allows it to keep unconsciously running things. And this is where my own growth edge shows up. A lot of the anger that I'm working through right now is anger towards other white folks, people in my family, people who supported the current administration, people who support policies that I see as actively destructive. And what I'm noticing is that my anger, when I don't know how to hold it, actually gets in the way of my liberation work, because it's making me shut down people. It's ruining my ability to stay in conversation, and it's preventing me from engaging with people that I might otherwise be able to reach. One inspiration for just allowing the slop and the messiness of this to shine through in its own way is Marie Beecham's podcast, Know Better, Do Better. And she's been releasing episodes where she openly talks about how she hasn't made up her mind about policing or racial profiling. And I love that. It reflects the sloppiness of this work, the uncertainty, the not knowing. And even when I was putting this together, I felt a tremendous urge to troubleshoot this, to offer solutions, to wrap it up neatly. And I'm intentionally not going to do that. I just want to sit in the messiness for a little bit. And if this messiness gives you some illumination, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. That's enough for me. Wherever you are, I'm wishing you well. Happy 2026. And may you and your loved ones find some little moments of peace and calmness and an ability to thrive in everything that's going on in the world. Okay. Wishing you well. Take care, everyone. I'm Eric, and this has been White People, Black Music, and Liberation. If this message speaks to you and you want to be part of the journey, head to whitepeopleblackmusic.com and let's build a world where liberation is for everyone.